r/AskReddit by Redmond Dts. What's the worst I hate to break it to you moment you had with someone? I had to tell my friend that the online girlfriend he'd been talking to for months was actually a scammer using stolen photos. He was planning to send her money to come visit, and breaking the news to him was one of the toughest conversations I've ever had. So, my friend had a similar thing going on. Claimed to have talked a bunch on the phone, and we didn't really believe him. Eventually, she asked for money for a ticket, and we were all like, there it is, and he finally believed us. He decided to put it to a test, to prove it once and for all, and told her that he'd bought her a ticket for the flight, assuming she'd make up an excuse to get out of it. He didn't really buy the ticket, assuming he was just calling out the catfisher. Well, to his surprise, the day of, he got a call from her at the airport, panicking because they couldn't find the ticket. He managed to play it off as a mistake and was able to get her on the flight. She really was the big titty goth girl from the photos. They dated for 5 years, and she came out every summer for like 5 years before they grew apart. I had a guy working for me that was extremely nice, easy to get along with, and wildly inept. Not even like low effort, but just not capable of learning seemingly basic tasks. We tried everything. Coaching, giving him legitimate checklist instructions, having a team lead sit with him for a couple weeks to walk him through basics, everything. Everyone said the same thing. He just couldn't do the job. Everything he did had to be double checked by somebody else, which meant that we might as well have somebody else do it. But everyone liked the guy, they thought he was easygoing and cool to be around, everything. But still he just straight up couldn't do that job. So I had to find another place for him in the company that would better match his skills. The option would be for him to either take the lower job with lower pay, or he would be fired with severance. I was not looking forward to the conversation. I called him in for a one-on-one to break it to him, and the first thing he started with was, "Hey boss, before we start, I just want to tell you that I really feel like I've been doing a great job here, and I would like to talk about a raise." Yeah, that conversation was not a fun one. I used to work in a customer care call center for a major telecommunications company. A woman called in one day to inquire about two $99 charges on her bill from Lava Life. She kept pressing about the charges, what they were, and I had to explain to her that Lava Life is a dating service, and that the charges were legitimate. If she didn't make them, did someone else live in her house who might have? There was only her husband, and I heard her go from, "But he would never," to, "I have to go now," as it set in. That was almost 20 years ago now, and I still feel awful about it. There was a rule at my job where only one of these two supervisors could be off at a time. One of them loved to take a full week off work during holidays to get more bang for his paid time off buck. One year, he had Thanksgiving week off, but the other supervisor had family come to town that week on late notice. The other supervisor asked him to cancel just one of his days so she could spend the day with family. He declined, even after she basically begged him, and he even said he didn't have anything to do that day. She then proceeded to take paid time off days every Wednesday of a holiday week for the next calendar year, effectively blocking him from taking his cheap weeks off. He told me that he thought it was funny because he knew she didn't have enough time to take all those vacation days off, and she'd eventually have to cancel some of them. I got to tell him, I hate to break it to you, but she only took 2 hours off each of those days. See, the rule didn't differentiate between a partial or whole day, so she only had to burn 24 or so hours to block him. He looked devastated. It was kind of petty on both of their parts, but I give her credit for being creative in her retribution, and don't blame her a bit for what she did. Not me, but I went to visit my dad at his job, and he has an employee there who was kind of bragging to his other co-workers about how well he has been doing at the job and thinking of asking for promotion. My dad later told me that he fired that guy later that day due to poor performance, despite multiple attempts to help him, lol. My best friend in high school was overweight and would sweat profusely. We would come in after lunch in Texas and he would smell awful. I think he would wear his clothes without washing them after sweating. We had English after and the AC sucked, so teacher put a fan in the window. He would sit in front of the fan and blow his funk over everyone. The class got together and voted that I should be the one to tell him. Well, I had to break it to him that for the last year he has smelled horribly. I felt pretty bad, but he never stunk again. I had an upper management type guy try to explain to me, in a very condescending way, how a specific device works and how to install it. All completely wrong. I wrote the manual for it. I own the patent. It's named after me. I came back from my first day of finals in my first semester of college to find 2 women in suits and a campus police officer waiting for me. The women were mental health counselors from the university. One of them tried to talk to me but started crying. The other one couldn't say anything either. It was finally the cop who told me that someone had broken into my mother's house that morning and murdered her, my mom. Definitely the time I had to tell a friend that the business opportunity he was so excited about was actually a pyramid scheme. He was so hyped, talking about how he was going to quit his job and be his own boss. I tried to ease into it, but there's really no soft way to say, hey man, you're about to lose a lot of money and ruin your friendships. My sister-in-law. My niece plays field hockey and I love her. She plays in 2 different leagues, meaning it's 3 hours of field hockey games every Saturday and Sunday. My sister-in-law expected me and my husband to drive an hour one way both days to watch niece play and pay rapt attention the whole time. Did I mention the games are at 7 AM? We did this about once a month on either Saturday or Sunday, and I guess this wasn't enough for her. We had to tell her that we loved niece, but we weren't going to be as involved as she was in the league. My sister and her husband had a newborn baby. 4 days old. My sister's husband turned to me and said, he'll sleep soon, right? When I got the call that my mom had passed, they wouldn't say that she had passed or that she had died. They kept saying medical things like, she doesn't have a pulse, she is not breathing, etc. It took a long time to understand that they were saying she was gone and that it was final. Freshman year of college, a friend said that he was going to go barefoot as much as possible to toughen up his feet so that his future kids would be born with tough feet too. Had to explain to him why that wouldn't work and the basics of genetics. He didn't believe me and stuck with his theory. We have since lost touch, but I know he had a son a few years ago. I'll have to ask him if it worked out. Having to tell a student who was almost totally blind that she likely couldn't be an ER nurse. She and her dad moved to our district, and at the IEP, her dad starts talking about how he can't wait for Sue to go to nursing school. I frantically scanned my brain, trying to think of how someone who was going to need Braille would be able to do that job. Then Sue piped up to say that her dream was to be an ER nurse. Her prior district told her she could do anything, including this. She had a degenerative disease that would eventually make her blind. I talked to my friends who are nurses, I talked to our career lady at the school, I researched, but there just wasn't any way someone who couldn't see could be an ER nurse. I recombined the IEP and had to explain this. I know both were in denial, but I was not happy that the prior district pumped up this idea. I mean, sure, there is lots she could still do, but that just wasn't one of them. Then another student came from the same district with the idea she could be a CSI investigator. She was also nearly blind. I have 2. The first one was having to tell my father and my brother's girlfriend that my brother had been in a bad automobile accident, that my cousin who had been with him was dead, and my brother was in a coma in a hospital 3 hours away. The second one was when I had to tell my mother that my sister was sleeping with my mother's boyfriend. That was a tough one. And yes, I was 100% sure because they did it in front of me. Had to tell my mom that my grandma had died and been buried a month before. My mom had been in a COVID-related coma for 6 weeks during that time. At one point they were actually in the ICU, in beds beside each other. Neither ever knew. So yeah, that sucked. I once had to tell a friend that the crypto expert he hired was actually part of a pyramid scheme. He stared at me in silence for a few seconds before saying, "I already invested everything." My ex-wife tried to commit suicide twice in 1 week. The second time, she was committed to a psych ward. Her mother decided to come over and help with the kids and household chores. The second day she is at the house, she comes out of the bedroom disoriented. Turns out she is having a stroke. For the third time that week, I had to call 911. I had to go to the psych ward and tell my suicidal, drugged up wife that her mother, who she was very close to, was in the hospital because she had a stroke. I had to tell my husband his ex-wife died. I felt so bad for him, but I assured him it's okay to be sad and that he should attend her memorial. It's part of my job, but telling a couple their 15-day-old had died overnight and was not able to be resuscitated. Those screams are a sound you can never scrub out of your brain. I hate to break it to you, but the hardest moment was telling my best friend that their partner was cheating. They were so in love and completely blinded by it, and when I broke the news, it shattered their world. It even strained our friendship for a while because sometimes, even when you're trying to help, the truth is too painful to accept. I found out my friend's girlfriend had hepatitis C. Her cousin told me she had it, and she was not going to tell him. No one else would tell him, so I called and told him. It was Valentine's Day, awkward. Telling my brother that our father wasn't going to make it. He died 2 days later, 6 months ago. My wife telling me that she wants a divorce about 30 minutes ago. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more. Have a nice evening. Tell your friends about me.